If you think living in a medieval castle was a non-stop parade of velvet gowns and roasted swans, I've got a colder, darker, smellier truth for you. Step inside with me, not as a lord, not as a lady, but as someone who actually kept the place running. You're the new household servant, a pair of cheap hands and a strong back, and the gate just slammed behind you. Take a breath. Notice how the air already tastes like wet stone, wood smoke, animal sweat, and a rumor of something worse. That's not the banquet you're smelling. That's the castle's daily perfume, and it gets into your hair, your wool, your lungs, your dreams. Your first lesson hits before breakfast. Privacy does not exist. You share a straw pallet with two other bodies in a room that doesn't know what daylight is. The walls are stone, the floor is damp, the ceiling sweats in winter, and the draft sneaks under the door like a burglar. Lice are part of the rent. If you spot one crawling on your sleeve, congratulations, you've met your new roommate. Fleas pop when you scratch them between your nails. You pretend not to notice. If you complain, someone older will shrug and say, better than sleeping in the ditch, which is the medieval version of it is what it is. Before the sun actually shows itself, the castle moves. Fires must be coaxed from last night's embers. Water must be hauled from the well or the cistern, because plumbing is a fairy tale. There's no faucet to turn, no hot pipe humming to save your fingers. You shoulder buckets on a yoke that chews your collarbones. If the well is deep, and they usually are, you'll pull up water that tastes of stone and iron and the faint memory of dead leaves. Sometimes it's clean enough, often it isn't, which is why everyone drinks ale or wine. Not because they want to be drunk at dawn, but because boiled, fermented liquid won't kill you as fast as raw water will. Lords sip imports. Servants take small beer, the weak stuff that keeps you standing, and dulls the edge of the smell without stealing your day. Speaking of smell, it's time to meet the castle's most honest room, the latrine. Toilet is too polite a word. Around here, they call them garderobes, and they are exactly what you're picturing. Long wooden benches with holes cut in them, hugging the outer wall so gravity can haul the mess down a chute into a cesspit. If you're lucky, the chute drains into a running ditch beyond the curtain wall. If you're not, it drops into a foul, silent pool that whispers up through the seat. You do your business shoulder to shoulder with people you have to face at supper. You keep your knife close because thieves love distracted pockets. You don't bring anything you can't afford to lose, not even keys, because if it falls, it's gone to a place you will not reach for it. Someone, someday, will have to empty that cesspit. They'll be called gong farmers, and they'll do it at night with rakes and buckets for decent pay and indecent conditions. You'll smell them before you see them. You'll also thank them, because without them, the castle becomes a nose-level crime scene. Now you understand why the floors are buried under rushes and herbs. They're not medieval interior design, they're damage control. Servants scatter reeds, straw, sweet flag, lavender, pennyroyal, anything that can drink up spills, and argue with the odor. It looks charming for a day. Give it a week, and you've got a mat of crushed stems hiding grease, dog dung, fish bones, dropped gristle, spit, and whatever leaked from last night's drunk. When the rushes are finally changed, you discover the truth. There was never a clean floor, only different layers of filthy. If your job is to change them, you tie a cloth over your mouth and pretend it helps. You sweep out the old with a shovel and fill baskets that sag with the weight of other people's secrets. No one thanks you. No one looks you in the eye. Meals happen when the day allows them. The kitchen is a beast, always hungry for fuel. In the earlier centuries, it's a wooden beast, and one stray ember turns the whole thing into a warning everyone hears too late. Later, they figure out stone hearths, high hoods, and separate kitchen buildings, because fire doesn't care who has a title. You scullions live with burns on your arms like badges. You spit-turners take a step every few moments to keep the meat from charring, and your calves throb until they're as hard as the Lord's silver. You will not taste the swan. You will not touch the imported pepper except to grind it into someone else's sauce. You eat where the heat is worst, a stew that tastes like salt, onion, and resignation. If you're lucky, a tranche of yesterday's pie ends up in your bowl. If not, you pass the ewer for hand washing and pretend you aren't hungry. When the great hall fills, the castle pretends to be a theater. Benches drag across stone. A trestle table stretches like a spine. Where you sit announces who you are. The closer to the lord and lady, the hotter the food. The cleaner the plates, the brighter the beeswax candles. Farther down the board, the illumination fades and tallow smoke claims the air, a greasy fog that clings to hair and cloth. Trenchers, thick slabs of stale bread catch the juices of meat and sauce. The lucky tear off edible walls. The less lucky hand their sodden trenchers to the poor or the dogs when the plates are cleared. Hands are the primary utensils. Knives are personal. Forks are exotic rumors. Salt sits in a prized cellar near the head table, and its position is a map of status. You carry dishes with the speed of a thief and the balance of a dancer because a spill earns a cuff and maybe worse. Hospitality is the castle's face. Discipline is its spine. The steward knows every name, every ration, every bedroll. The chamberlain rules the lord's chambers like a jealous god, controlling sheets, candles, keys. The butler guards the buttery, measuring out ale as if it were gold. The marshal mines horses and men at arms. The reeve squeezes the estate's accounts until they squeal. There are laundresses who boil linen in lye so strong it pickles your knuckles. There are brewsters who keep the ale safe and sour enough to be safe again. There are falconers with calm hands and dirty cuffs, and there are scribes who turn the Lord's voice into ink and wax and fines. Every task in this stone organism connects to another task. If someone fails, you feel it 2 corridors away, as a missing cup, a cold hearth, a late signal. You might be wondering, do these people ever wash? They do, when they can. Medieval folks aren't allergic to cleanliness, they're blocked from it by bad infrastructure. Bathing means dragging a heavy wooden tub into a room, hauling buckets until your shoulders scream, and heating water in kettles that fight for space over the fire. You go first if you've got money. Everyone else climbs in afterward until the water looks like soup you wouldn't feed a dog. Soap is harsh lye and animal fat that strips grease and some of your skin. Linen is the real secret. You change it as often as you can, because fresh linen steals sweat and keeps the itch down. The Lord can afford beeswax candles that scent the chamber. You make do with tallow that smokes and spits. The difference is not small. It is the difference between sleeping in a room and surviving it. Night in the castle is not quiet. The stone swallows voices and throws them back in pieces. Guards pace. Dogs growl at nothing. Wind moans in arrow slits. Somewhere, a newborn wails if the baby lives. Maybe someone will get a day's wages for midwifing. Somewhere else, a prisoner coughs in a place most people would rather not think about. Yes, there is a dungeon. Sometimes it is a simple pit. Sometimes it's a set of vaulted cells below ground level where damp is a permanent resident and hope is contraband. People end up there for crimes that would fill a ledger poaching deer, cheating at dice, slandering a knight, or for crimes that cannot be written because they insulted the wrong mouth in the wrong room. Pain is considered medicine for the soul. If you can't afford a lawyer and you pray for a short lesson rather than a long sermon. If rats chew ropes in the night, they aren't planning a rescue. They're auditioning for the kind of story people whisper when they want to scare children. All this misery, and still the castle is never empty. It's a small, walled city, and every day is a market of needs. Carters clatter in. Peddlers beg permission to sell needles and comb. Pilgrims ask for bread, and sometimes they get it. Minstrels swagger with lutes and gossip. A messenger arrives with a writ bearing a seal as heavy as your future. Hunt parties go out with horns and come home with blood on their boots. A visiting lord brings twice the trouble with half the courtesy. For festivals, the place swells until it groans, and kitchens operate like siege engines of meat, flour, and onions. The castle swallows coin and spits out hierarchy. It is not built for comfort. It is built to project power and survive violence. Comfort, when it happens, is a side effect. Let's talk winter. because winter turns the dial from difficult to, are you kidding me? The great hall becomes a cave of breath steam. Fires chew through cords of wood and still fail to warm the corners. Your skin cracks from cold and lie. The blood from your knuckles looks like berries crushed on a cutting board. The river outside skins over with ice and dares you to slip. The well rope freezes. The bucket tries to weld to your hands. You sleep in wool, under wool, next to wool, and wake up colder than when you fell asleep. Rats rejoice. They move in closer to the food stores, bold as neighbors, and you learn why cats are worth their weight in favors. Traps are crude. Poison is risky. You sweep, you curse, you clap two rats together in the pantry and hope they handle each other. If plague comes, and some winters, it does. It rides fleabacks, not rat feet, but good luck explaining the nuance when bodies are being carted out. Now, heat. Summer turns the cesspits into open arguments and gives the kitchens a pulse like a fever. Flies decorate the air as if invited. Water goes green faster. You sweat through wool and wish you didn't have to wear so much. But nudity is a sin and a risk, and bare skin loses fights against stone. Outdoor work becomes a negotiation with dehydration. You drink more ale and move a little slower unless someone is watching, in which case you speed up because you like meals. The herbs strewn on the floor rot faster, and the changeover becomes a ritual of gagging. If anyone tells you castle life is elegant, ask them to spend an hour in the midsummer garderobe and watch their optimism die. Some of you are asking, what about the nobles? Didn't they have it better? Of course they did. They have private chambers with fireplaces, feather mattresses, carved chests that lock, polished cups that don't smell like tallow. They can afford to burn beeswax in the chapel and in their rooms, so the smoke rises clean and honey-sweet. They own linen that's softer, fur that's warmer, and dishes that traveled farther than you ever will. They also own responsibilities that would snap most spines, keeping vassals in line, making legal judgments, paying soldiers, currying favor with bigger sharks. They play chess with people's lives. They kneel in the castle chapel at dawn, not just for their souls, but to be seen kneeling, because piety is politics. Yes, they drink better wine. Yes, they take hot baths more often. But a noble with a headache is still a person with a headache in a building designed to echo. Their privacy is relative. Every door has ears. Religion stitches the day. Bells tug you from bed, from work, from meat, from anger. The chapel is the castle's conscience and its stage. On big feast days, the Lord's family may sit in a gallery above, literally looking down on the household. You don't need a sermon to understand the message. Bread and wine, incense, and Latin, you don't grasp every word, but you understand the rhythm. Confession works like a drain. You pour your small wrongs down it and hope the big ones stick to someone richer. You cross yourself before hard tasks because if you fail, at least you can say you tried to invite help. Let's visit the sleeping arrangements again, because everyone lies about sleep. The Lord and Lady have a bed big enough to be a room, curtained to keep out drafts and eyes. You share a pallet, a blanket, and the proof that snoring predates history. You wake when other people turn, when someone's nightmare mutters, when a guard shouts a challenge from the wall walk, when the wind plays the arrow slits like flutes. When illness comes, it moves through the sleeping spaces like gossip, and by the time you realize the sniffles are not sniffles, everyone is sharing them. There's no such thing as calling in sick. There's only work slower and hope you live. What about entertainment that doesn't involve watching your betters eat? There's music when a traveling player arrives. There's dice when the steward isn't looking, and trouble when he is. There's wrestling in the yard because humans need to test each other. There's storytelling so sharp it could carve bread. There's archery practice on the green outside because the law says men must shoot, and the crown likes its subjects dangerous to the right enemies. There's flirting in thresholds, because thresholds are where you can be seen enough to be noticed, and hidden enough to pretend you weren't. The law in a castle is as heavy as the stones. It keeps order and keeps the order two different jobs. Punishments range from fines that humiliate your purse, to pillories that humiliate your face, to cells that freeze your courage. If you steal a loaf, the bakehouse will miss nothing. The tally system is merciless. If you brawl, the bruise on your eye will speak for you before you do. If you slander a superior, the truth of your words will not save you. You learn to talk around power. You learn to bow at the right angle. You learn to tell the truth in a way that sounds like obedience. Do castles ever feel safe? Safer than lying in an open field? Yes. But they are siege machines first, homes second. Every comfort exists inside a compromise. Those beautiful arrow slits are also wind tunnels. That thick gatehouse is also a mouth waiting to bite shut. That well in the yard is a blessing until someone poisons it, which has happened enough to make people speak the possibility in a whisper. During a siege, garderobes can be a liability if sappers find the chute and squirm up like nightmares. Kitchens ration fat, granaries lock. Hope is counted in barrels. Songs get shorter and angrier. You sleep in your clothes and dream of fire. Births and deaths are public business. A child arrives with a midwife's bloody hands and a room full of breathless prayers. Sometimes the mother lives. Sometimes the baby lives. Sometimes both do, and the castle celebrates like a drought ended. A servant dies of fever and is wrapped in linen, the laundry washed that morning. The priest says everything he is supposed to say, and the work does not pause. It can't. Bread burns even at funerals. By now, some of you are thinking, all right, that's grim. Was there any pride in this life? Absolutely. If you lasted, you earned a quiet pride sharper than trumpets. Pride in floors laid with clean rushes by noon. Pride in a hearth that draws clear and hot after days of smoke fighting you. Pride in a table set straight, in a sauce that doesn't split, in a latch that catches, in a sheet that smells like sunlight and not regret. Pride in knowing every stair you can run blind, every door you can open with your hip because your hands are full, every guard who drinks too much, every cat who earns its keep. Pride in being a human gear in a savage, beautiful machine and making it run smoother than yesterday. And if, once in a rare while, you find yourself in the great hall when the minstrels hit the right song, and the cups are bright, and the Lord is smiling, and no one is shouting, and even the dogs are quiet, you look around and admit the truth. It is magnificent. Not comfortable, not cozy, but magnificent. The banners throw color at the walls. The armor gleams like captured lightning. People laugh who have not laughed all week. You smile because for one breath you can pretend the castle is gentle. Then the platter needs clearing and someone spills ale and a hound steals a pie and the steward snaps your name, and magnificence goes back to being a job. So, would you trade your life for a bed behind a curtain of velvet and the right to sit near the salt? Be honest. It is easy to love the idea of a castle from a clean couch. It is hard to live inside one with cold hands and a bucket to lift. But if you followed me through the stink and the smoke and the noise without flinching, you understand something most people don't. Castles were not palaces. They were armored lungs that breathed people. They were fortresses that pretended to be homes just long enough to survive the next crisis. They were cities shrunk to the size of a hill, packed tight with rank and sweat and prayer and fear. Tell me in the comments, could you carry the yoke, haul the water, change the rushes, face the garderobe, serve the meat, dodge the steward, share the pallet, and still sing at night? Could you live in a place that saves you from enemies and tries to drown you in smells? Could you thrive where comfort is a rumor and duty is the only thing that arrives on time? If your answer is yes, then welcome to the castle. Take a bucket. The well isn't going to pull itself.